Asia-Pacific sectors could face a complicated credit landscape as trade tensions escalate. That is according to a March 26 report by S&P Global Ratings, rounding up credit conditions in the region in the second quarter. A day later, S&P Global Ratings came out with a separate report saying trade complications could disturb still waters in the Asia-Pacific. With us to make sense of it all, live from Singapore, the head of credit research, Asia-Pacific at S&P Global Ratings, the lead author of the twin reports, Eunice Tan. So good to see you, Eunice. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Katie. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's take on your March 26 report. It highlights the strategic competition that we're seeing between the U.S. and China, both of which are the Philippines' biggest trading partners. So what have you and your team assessed? Maybe the implications on, first, the Philippine peso, and monetary policy next, should geopolitical tensions create these supply chain uncertainty and crimp financing access?
That's a really loaded question with a lot of areas to touch on. So first and foremost, our view is Philippines is less at risk of the US tariffs. Philippines is reliant on consumption and service exports, hence less sensitive to tariff headwinds, and this provides some relief to the peso. The country also has a low import tariff and no major bilateral goods surplus with the US. At the same time, we are anticipating there could be 3 product groups that could be having targeted global tariffs. These 3 are auto, pharmaceutical, and semiconductors. And for that, Philippines does not have significant exports to the US for these 3 product groups. Now, on currencies, the key aspects to watch is, clearly the low and stable inflation and a closing output gap is helping Asia-Pacific central banks to conduct modest easing of the monetary policy. Similarly, we expect the BSP to actually be doing 225 bips rate cuts this year. But at the same time, the concerns of still elevated levels of US interest rates could risk capital outflows from the region.
As you say,
we do anticipate some marginal weakening of the peso to around 58.
Right, less at risk, but still at risk. So what is a bigger risk for the Philippines? Exposed as we are to the trading partners, US and China, is it the possibility of a US recession or higher tariffs dragging China's economic growth?
Yeah, indeed. Geopolitical tensions, supply chain disruptions could risk higher demands of premium from lenders and possibly higher energy prices. For Philippines, trade with China accounts for 9% of the GDP, while trade with the US is 4%. So this means Philippines is much more sensitive to China. However, it's important to note this is much lower than surrounding economies. For instance, Malaysia, trade with China is about 25% of GDP and 17% of trade with the US.
Your March 27 report focuses now on the trade complications. You flagged a hit to demand that could erode corporate revenues, especially for banks. So how much narrowing then of the credit headroom when it comes to Philippine corporates relative to its ASEAN neighbors?
Okay. Well, the regional corporate credit conditions are likely to stay uneven across countries and sectors in 2025. As mentioned, Philippines is much more services export, so the impact will be less so compared to the others. So most rated firms in S&P's purview expects that they can weather the direct impact of tariffs, but operating performance will weaken owing to a slower regional and global growth. The huge amount of uncertainty around tariffs and slower growth in China could interrupt the trend of improving funding conditions. So this all could exacerbate lenders' willingness to provide funds, and this could narrow ratings headroom for those who are looking to get sort of refinancing and so forth.
Which leads us to your net rating outlook bias. It has improved, I've seen, to a negative 2%. As of this month, because of the downgrades in New Zealand's public finance issuers. But could you give us more color then on the net outlook rating, where the negative bias is largest in the region?
Sure. So supportive financing conditions and domestic consumptions are stating Asia-Pacific's credit conditions. So this reflects in the improvement, as you mentioned, to about negative 2% for our net rating outlook bias. We see the negative bias largest for chemicals, building materials, retail, transportation cyclical, and real estate for the region. Now, we revised our outlook on the Philippines government to positive since November 2024 on the grounds of improving effective policy making in the Philippines, which has aided fiscal reforms and higher government revenues as part of the GDP. And this also helped to funnel public investments. So this same positive outlook has been applied to a few ratings in the region, for Philippines, particularly, including Development Bank of Philippines and Power Sector Assets and Liabilities Management Corp. So you would look at the net rating outlook bias for Philippines as slightly more towards the positive side.
We really appreciate you giving us a look-see into what will be S&P Global's interactive webinar tomorrow on April 2nd on the global credit conditions. Thank you so much, Eunice. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
Eunice Tan of S&P Global live in Singapore.